Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast, live from the Toyota Lounge. Make sure you get to your local Toyota dealerships. They power us here at DNVR. We got Megan, we got AJ, we got Rudo coming to you live. Gonna answer a bunch of your questions today. We got a bunch of them in the hopper. We'll get to all of the ones, including the one in the title. But first, we had a Bet365 top 5 to get to. Season's over. And we know what? We need to celebrate the Avs a little bit more. So how about the top 5 performances of the season from the Colorado Avalanche?
These are individual game performances.
Yep.
Not like season performances. Just
Otherwise, it's Nathan MacKinnon had a 38 home point streak.
Yeah, like it would just be 5 different things that Nathan MacKinnon did.
It's still sort of that, but not quite all 5.
Yeah, Nathan MacKinnon shows up on here.
I don't know what order you put them in, AJ. So,
yeah, number 5, I wanted to give Lecky some love because, one, this game I thought was awesome. Mm-hmm. Carolina, this was in the middle of Carolina giving up like 6 goals a game. It was that really weird stretch at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
4 points for Lecky, 2 goals, 2 assists. I thought that ruled.
It's a fascinating conversation with what Arturi Lehkonen has become for this Colorado Avalanche team. Obviously, of late, we've talked a lot about Gabe Landeskog and his potential return and everything that he means to the Avs. And I'm not saying Gabe Landeskog is replaceable, but Lehkonen has definitely taken up the mantle of some of the roles that Gabe Landeskog plays, at least on the ice, when it comes for the Colorado Avalanche.
I think it's pretty fitting that they've replaced the 92 with a 62. Very similar in a lot of ways, not quite the same.
Yeah, a little less than 92.
Exactly. Exactly.
Math adds up, I guess.
But
Hockey math.
The practical reasons that he's similar, you know, what he adds to the entirety of the lineup, what he can add to special teams. If you throw him on PP1, he'd make a great guy on PP2, you know, when they get more personnel back.
Yep.
He can PK, and he is a warrior. He kind of has that quality like Landeskog as a warrior.
Yep.
It maybe doesn't read the same because he doesn't carry the captaincy title in how he is a warrior on the ice, but it is something that the top six desperately needed. And, you know, without Ivan Nichushkin up there too, he's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
For sure.
Every year he comes, like these last 2 playoffs, an injury comes out about him, and he was just battling through. And I don't necessarily want to endorse that specifically, but he overcame a lot with injury this year, you know, the scary neck injury, and continued to be such an impact player for the Avs. I think that he was such a great addition from that trade deadline of the Cup year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It has gone from a guy the Avs acquired as additional depth to a solid lock in their top 6. And obviously now shoulder surgery this offseason should be fine for next year. But maybe that's just another thing that he's like Gabe Landeskog with. Needs too many surgeries.
Yeah, I am a little bit concerned about that because he's not a really big guy.
He is not.
And at the end of every postseason, he's hurt.
Yeah.
And
broken toe. I think we can move past
that
the
one's
broken
not too
toe.
bad.
I think he's fine. How many toes do you need?
Exactly.
Scientifically, I do wonder.
I can't go off on this tangent. Women's footwear is way too narrow, and we're losing our pinky toes. Like, we're not actually losing them, but this was not how it was meant to be.
I can't even imagine. Like, I have to wear men's extra wides to fit my feet. I have women's shoes I can't even imagine.
One of the reasons I got these shoes is because they were wider.
Those are barefoot shoes, yeah?
They are.
There's a former DU kid who has started his own barefoot shoe brand. Really good friends with Logan O'Connor. It's called Tolos. You guys should check it out if you're interested in the barefoot shoe world.
There you go. Shout out LOC, another guy having surgery,
He's
I
an
guess.
ambassador for the footwear, so.
Bam. Easy life. Go
Barefoot
get your
shoes are.
P.S. LOC, call us. We can sponsorship opportunity for the DNVR Avalanche pod.
I'll switch shoes.
Yes. I'll switch shoes. I'm so excited. Like, honestly, that world seems really welcoming to all barefoot shoes that I think you can have many barefoot shoes and everybody's cool with it. I can't speak on behalf of them. I'm clearly not one of them, but.
I don't know. That seems exactly like the kind of world that feels that way. And then in 10 years, we have a Netflix documentary.
The Shoe Wars.
Yeah, about how it went from Adidas versus Nike versus Reebok to the barefoot shoe world.
That barefoot
and all
beef.
the corporate
Barefoot
espionage
beef.
that was going on. Barefoot Beef is disgusting, but the perfect name for that documentary.
Barefoot Beef.
Oh, you could tell it's the off season. Number 4.
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's perfect.
Starting the pot off on the right foot is the perfect comment
the
for this.
right foot.
Aww.
Well timed. The Logan O'Connor hat trick.
Yep. Super awesome to watch. Got a little help from McKinnon into the empty netter, but still.
He got a hat trick.
It counts all the same.
It rocks. I mean, that's just, you talk about, there was a point in time where the Avs just didn't have hat tricks.
Yep. It was like a 4-year span where they just didn't have one.
There just wasn't a hat trick, and then when they started happening, it was almost always Mikko Rantanen.
He's got like 7. It's so dumb.
It was just like every year, you're like, Mikko's good for like a couple of these things. And now you look at this year, and there's like 4 guys that had hat tricks?
McKinnon, LOC. Did Mikko have one?
I'm assuming, and then
Makar.
Yeah, and then Nichushkin had one in the
so
postseason.
If you count the postseason 5 guys.
Yeah, because I feel like this could be really wrong, but I feel like Mikko had a hat trick on the road.
That sounds right.
Someone did, and it wasn't McKinnon,
Yeah. I don't know.
and it wasn't LOC that
Yeah.
I'm thinking of specifically.
Right,
I just
right.
can't place who this other person was because
Yeah.
they were handing them out like candy.
Nonetheless, this one, it's always fun to see when the guy in the interview after is like, yeah, I think my last hat trick was when I was like 12.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, so it's been a minute.
Yeah, I mean, well, and like you look at the roster at the beginning of the year, and you're like, all right, who's not getting a hat trick this year? Like, if you were just like,
LOC's on that list.
you're not looking at it being LOC, a guy that's like, I'm going to score 10 goals a year. You're not looking at it being like, yeah, 3 of them came in one game.
And yet, here you are.
Yeah, LOC, weird year for him. He had a 3-goal game, and he had 3 games in a row with a shorthanded goal.
And easily a career pace for him, unfortunately.
That's what makes the injury tough.
yeah.
Is it actually felt like it could be relatively sustainable. He was at least trending to have a career year in terms of his production pace. And again, it felt like he could keep this up. The talent around him, if he continued to play on that third line with Wood and Colton, it elevated the opportunity for him to get there. And so it is a shame that it ended with some injury to kind of derail it.
I love your point, though. While the injury sucks, especially we saw that Wood and Colton line start to struggle without him when he did go out with injury. The reality around that conversation is, obviously LOC has to get back and be healthy next year, but he might just be a third liner now.
It's where he should start next year.
Yep.
And that injury was such a bummer.
Yep.
His previous like scoring explosions either happened
They
on the
lasted
fourth line.
exactly 2 weeks and then
They
disappeared.
either happened on the fourth line where you were like, no fourth line ever keeps this up.
Yep.
It's
Right.
just, it doesn't happen. Or they happened in those rare moments where he was moonlighting in the top 6, where you were like,
because the Avs were so hurt that it's like, we don't have anybody else.
yeah, like LOC is now on your top line next to Nathan McKinnon or Mikko Rantanen as a center. Like, there were situations there where you're like, this won't continue. This year was very different for the reasons that Megan stated, and his reasons for a lot of optimism regarding LOC moving into next year. He was the glue guy for them. He made every line and every unit that he was on better. For me, he was the MVP of that bottom 6 because you saw how hard they had to work without him.
Yep.
And I'm glad that we get to talk about him because his hat trick rocked.
Number 3.
Kale McCarr just dominating the Red Wings.
It's, when you think about it, I don't know that it's that surprising, but learning that that's Cale Makar's first ever NHL hat trick is like, huh.
Also, it was his only regular season game this year with multiple goals.
Yep.
I was going through his game log, and I was like, is this right? He only had goals in 19 games this year? And it's
Being a
absurd of me to...
defenseman is hard, man.
It's absurd for me to feel that way. Oh, only 1/4 of the games this defenseman had a goal in? But, that's... Cale McCarr scores a lot of goals for a defenseman. That it feels like he's a top 6 forward most of the
He
time.
doesn't just score a lot of goals for a defenseman, to be clear. He is far and away, since he entered the league, the leading defensive goal scorer in the NHL.
Yeah.
It's not close.
Yeah. The 20-goal mark used to be like a gold standard for offensive defensemen. Like Mike Green hit it a couple of times.
Yep.
Erik Karlsson has pushed it, and it's like, Cale Makar, we go into the
That's
season
just
going.
the expectation. Yeah.
So what, 20, 25? He has a bad year, he'll get to 17.
Yeah, has a bad year, still career year in points.
So silly.
Yeah.
So silly, the expectations on Makar, but he is just that good. Obviously, a hat trick is dope. No argument with that. You know what's better than a hat trick, though? 4 goals. By the way, just a thing that had never happened to this organization before Nathan MacKinnon.
Yeah, this is the second one. This is the second time he did it.
So stupid, dude.
A 4-goal game is just comical.
Yep.
You think about all the talent that had happened in the franchise's history. Not just the Avalanche history, but franchise history.
Yep.
None of those guys had ever scored 4 goals in a game. And this is the second time that Nathan MacKinnon did it in, 5 weeks, 6 weeks?
Yeah, it was dumb. And multiple 4-goal games in one season is
There's a
silly.
reason he's going to win the MVP.
Yeah. And just to put this in perspective beyond the Avs, Steven Stamkos had his first ever 4-goal game this season. A guy who's going to retire with 600 goals?
I don't think he'll get that high.
He's already at 500, right? I don't. How many good years does he have left with those injuries? Fair enough. Either way,
He was last generation's.
a guy considered to be an elite goal scorer.
Yeah, second best pure goal scorer behind Alex Ovechkin.
And he now has 1 4-goal game in his career.
1. We're going for 1.
To single-handedly impact the game in that way is demoralizing for the other team. It's impressive from MacKinnon. And I remember when we had posed the question on Twitter, was this a weird year in the NHL? Someone brought up the Mac Trick game. People were throwing undergarments onto the ice.
It's not normal.
That is not normal. And it is a wonderful memory from this season. Ballerina went wild.
Well, when you run out of hats, you throw the hats for the 3rd goal. When you get to the 4th goal, what are you going to do? I, for one, appreciate that the ladies stepped up.
I heard some interesting stories about the mechanics, too, of how women were getting undergarments off from their seats. They weren't excusing themselves to go to the bathroom, doing this in between periods
Doing
to get
it
ready just in
live, yeah.
case. They did it live. And that's really impressive.
There are heroes among us in the
There are
world.
heroes among us. They reside in Colorado.
And then number 1 is Nathan MacKinnon's first 4-goal game.
That's really the only differentiator between them.
Because one of them came first.
Yep. And it was the first time it had happened.
This is the one.
And, I mean, ridiculous. 141-point season. Couple of 5-point games goes a long way.
Obviously, this list could have largely been Nathan MacKinnon performances.
Oh,
I wanted to
totally.
break it up a little bit and have an excuse to talk about Logan O'Connor. That's why it's fun to be the person that makes the list, because you
can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you do what you want. So, I just 2 4-goal games. I think they were 30 some odd days apart.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, either way, that was our Bet365 Never Ordinary Top 5. Make sure you're hanging out with Bet365. Go get with them. Go get Bet365 today. You can download their app and use the DNVR 365 code to get amazing boosts every single day. Obviously, a ton of great options when it comes to Bet365. You can go on there and find out all of their boosts every single day, including we regularly have a DNVR specific bet for you. Obviously, a little bit tougher now that the Avs and Nuggets are eliminated, but we'll still get some bets in there over the summer on the Rockies or maybe against the Rockies. Who's to say? Really? I don't know, but we'll get them in there one way or another. So jump on it with Bet365. Of course, you can bet on pretty much all the sports under the sun. Actually, low-key, I know we're still a couple months away, but I'm going to lose my whole bank account betting on the Olympics.
Oh, hadn't thought about it, but yep.
A lot of Go America is going to happen.
Go America.
On
man.
my Bet365 account. We'll put it to you that way. Obviously, that's not till the end of July. But
Especially going to be fun because I'm not going to know anything about any of those sports. I'm just going to be I'm going to bet on the United States and Canadian teams over and over in a bunch of sports that they may or may not be good in. YOLO.
all right, here's my inside line. All right, professional climbing, Brooke Rabbitoux. Get the bet in. Trust me. You'll be thanking me later.
Is that like the bouldering?
Yeah.
It was so awesome to watch last time.
It's so cool. It's such a cool sport. With Bet365, when you bet $5 or more and you use the DNVR365 code to sign up, you get $150 in bonus bets. Of course, when you use Bet365, you must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. And once you've got your bets in with all of Bet365, make sure you are getting in with Westera Credit Union. Look, I love betting as much as the next guy. You got to keep at least a little bit of money safe and sound, all right? So you might as well use Westera to do it. Westera, local here in Colorado since 1934. I grew up with them over in Lakewood. They were founded by 8 school teachers, so helping is in their DNA. They have a couple of new products they just launched, including Smart Money Checking. It's a checking account where you can earn up to 6% annual percentage yield on your first $2,000 each month. And as your balance grows, so does your potential to unlock additional great rates for higher balances. On top of this, you can also earn other rewards through their rewards debit card. They have no monthly or maintenance fees and so much more. If you like earning money by doing the things you're already doing with your checking account, visit westeracu.com/smartmoney for more details. Membership eligibility required, insured by NCUA. Restrictions and conditions apply. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. AJ's locked in on his microphone over there.
It's bouncing. I'm not even touching it. It's just
the airwaves. It's probably me.
Oh, the foot somehow?
Yeah, am I?
Stop doing it. We'll see.
Okay, I stopped. Is it still bouncing? I can't tell.
I also can't tell. No, it stopped. It was you.
Yeah.
Well done.
Powerful legs out there.
Seriously. Restless and powerful.
Listener questions. We took a bunch of listener questions from both Twitter and our diehard Discord. By the way, become a diehard today. If you want priority on your questions, you can put them in there for the next one. We had 2 questions that were really the same thing from our diehards. Luke asked, how would you rebuild the defense? And Blake asked, how would you build a second pairing or rework a second pairing for the Avs? Here's the thing. I think the most likely outcome is you don't. The top 4, I think the most likely outcome is it's the same at the start of next season.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is always to bet on a lack of changes versus a lot of changes.
Yeah.
It's hard to make a lot of changes. But if I'm reworking the defense, I'm starting with Josh Manson. Entirely because I don't think he's a bad player. I don't think he's a bad fit. I just think a little over $4 million is too much. And I think you could get 90% of the same of the player at $2 million.
Yeah.
Elsewhere.
Strictly a money move.
Exactly. Because it's not, people always want to pretend, oh, if I trade a player for picks, I just got rid of $4 million. Oh, you have to replace him.
That spot has to be filled. Yeah.
So you have to replace him with somebody that can actually play. And the idea would be to increase your cost efficiency at the position, which I just don't think exists with Josh Manson.
Sure.
You're not going out there and going, okay, well, we got 4.25 on Josh Manson, and now we're going to go sign Dylan DeMello for $2 million. Yeah, if you could do that, great. But is Dylan DeMello going to take $2 million? I am not convinced. And
I know a lot of teams that would love to sign him at that number.
If he takes $3.5 million, honestly, you have a conversation about it. And you say, okay, well, how much money did I really save doing that? You say, well, you saved $750. That's almost a
one ELC,
one fourth line contract. Yeah. And you're going to have to clear out the bottom of your roster with guys like that. You're not going to be able to go 1.25 on those guys this year. You're going to need them on $800K deals. So that's, I think that's the challenge. And with Gerard, honestly, I just don't know what to do there. $5 million is more money than I would like to be spending on him, but he's also coming off of such a good year where his role increased in a lot of ways. Because he's coming off such a good year, like, he got more responsibility because he earned it through his play. He doesn't produce as many points as I would like, personally.
Yep.
But it's also not a barren wasteland. He's not a 13-point guy.
Here's the thing for me with Girard. I think Girard is really a next offseason conversation. Because at the end of this next season, you're going to know a whole lot more what you have in Sam Malinsky. And you're going to be 1 year closer to a Sean Barons or a Mikhail Gulyayev.
Yeah.
And you really just don't have the answers of what would be replacing Girard internally right now if you're looking to move on from him. And I know some people have talked about you get rid of Girard and have Sean Walker fill that role for a potentially cheaper price. To be honest with you, I just don't know what Sean Walker's price is going to be this offseason. If Sean Walker gets $4.5 million, you're only saving $500K on Girard. And personally, I have a lot more faith in Girard's defensive end in the Avalanche system than I would with a Sean Walker.
Girard's also several years younger.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Another thing to factor in for sure.
It is hard to compete with the year that Girard had because I would believe in the offensive upside in Girard over a player like Walker. And so that kind of feels like if you're replacing him with one, you at least want to believe in that part over it. And then to your guys' point, defensively, Girard is just more reliable. It's become a strength of his game defensively in this last year that you have to at least be thinking of replacing with something comparable. I don't even want to say better because if you're saving money, then you can maybe grant some allowances. But it just doesn't feel like if in either of those areas they're not better than Girard, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yep.
I think he's the strongest piece on their second pair right now. It's not to demerit Josh Manson. It's just that Manson's contract has created intriguing framework for what I think other defensemen now want, especially when they have that upside of potentially being a second pair defenseman. And I just think that they haven't quite gotten the max value for that contract out of Manson.
Yep.
Some of it has been health, really great guy, a leader in the room. Like, there's a lot of reasons that I still really like Josh Manson, but he does come with some of the defensive reads that lead to mistakes. And the thing I think about that people really like about Manson that I think is replaceable is the physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And when I mean replaceable is I think that you could maybe find a way to satisfy that in a third pair role and find something just a little bit different for who will complement a player like Girard. You know, Bo and Byram's don't grow on trees, but you kind of see what they were aiming for when at least Byram was a part of the future plan, and that is really different from a Manson. I think that they could find the physical, hard-nosed player who plays with that kind of edge and have him in a third pair role and pivot to that and maybe consider upgrading that second pair in Manson's place with something that's just a different,
More
pivoting
well-rounded,
from that.
perhaps.
Yeah.
I also think that Manson, for as much as we talk about Manson's physicality and how he's built for a postseason series and all that, he just got the shit kicked out of him by Jamie Benn.
Yep.
And, like, you win some, you lose some. Jamie Benn had a career revival, 2 years ago?
Yep.
And returned to being a very effective NHL player. I just don't know that it's such a hard thing to find at this point. And his physicality is also the double-edged sword. It's what leads him to taking a lot of bad penalties.
Yeah.
I worry, and if other teams that are interested in Manson are listening, cover your ears. I worry about his age. I worry, especially watching that playoff series against Ben. Is he starting to lose a little bit of that foot speed? Is it becoming a little bit too easy to beat that guy wide? And the reality is physicality at the sacrifice of actual effective defense does not lead to quality NHL play.
Yeah, you get Jack Johnson.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see. The one thing about this and a number of other conversations we're going to have and questions today, it's the NHL. If there's a move that makes you better, you do it.
Yeah.
You figure out a way to do it. If it doesn't make you better, why are you doing it? And in a team that is in this situation that the Avs are in, which is cup window, you're trying to win now as much as possible. If a move does not make your roster better, your current playing roster, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
So
Also, he's at 4.5, not 4.25.
Is it 4.5?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 4.5. So
Even
in my
worse, yeah.
hypothetical of Dylan DeMello at 3.5, you
Now
saved
you
$1
saved
million.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you've really changed much
Yep.
in effectiveness. Dylan DeMello was really good for the Jets this year. So,
All right. Next question.
Anyway,
This one from Arvada Luke. Using your imagination, what would the best possible offseason look like for the Avs? Best possible offseason, Landeskog is perfectly healthy and good to go. You give Val Nichushkin's money to Jonathan Drouin, and you terminate that contract when the time comes. You fill out your depth with quality money. I'm going to just throw a name out there because I saw it on Twitter the other day. You go sign Andre Kasha to a ridiculously cheap deal, and he helps fill out your depth and actually stays healthy for once in your life.
Jesus.
Apparently, he's trying to make an NHL return. So, but fill in your undervalued depth guy that will overperform in Colorado. You go out and get one of those. You fill out your bottom pairing defense with Sam Malinsky and one high quality defenseman. If you want to move on from a Josh Manson and do that, that's up to you. And then you go and get a top 10 goaltender. That's using my imagination. You do all of those things.
Do you have anything off the top of your head?
I loved Chris McFarland's comments about Cal Ritchie becoming man strong. So if he could like Hulk out over the summer and become NHL ready,
I'm in.
they said use your imagination.
Hey, that can
Yeah,
be their
yo. Cal
that can be
Ritchie's
their
ready.
depth ad for sure.
Cal
yeah.
Ritchie's ready for the NHL.
I'm here for
That's
it.
my imagination.
Where do you put him?
I don't want to like reduce him to a bottom six role, but I think that
If he's ready this year, I don't see any other way.
yeah, if he's ready this year, usher him in and get some really good talent around him. Like this is where the tough conversation about like Andrew Cogliano, what does that look like? You can't have a fourth line with Cal Ritchie with an Andrew Cogliano. Those two things won't make sense. You're going to need different talent around that fourth line to make it, again, it's just pivoting to a completely different look.
Hear me out. Sucks for LOC and Miles Wood. But you move Ritchie to wing, you put him next to Ross Colton, and you have Nikolai Kovalenko on the other side.
All right, I had Kovalenko penciled in with Ritchie in whatever future
There you
scenario
go.
we're looking
Perfect.
at. So Kovalenko also
Just
has
tie
a big
them together.
offseason. Yeah, they're tied together. I don't know what Kovalenko needs to do specifically this offseason to get there, but he gets there too.
I feel like that one's a little bit less imaginary than the Cal Ritchie side.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. It started with a guy hulking out. So there's some work to be done on that. Yeah.
Well, you know.
I think there's imagination in it.
No, in the Ritchie stuff,
There's
I
a
think
lot
for
of
sure.
imagination.
Yeah.
Oh my.
It's fun when there are no rules in your imagination.
It's fun when there are no rules.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. Oh my God, this is a long question. From Katie, yeah. Do you think Jared Bednar will ever win the Jack Adams Award as the Avs coach? Why does he keep getting overlooked, dismissed by voters? What has been the key to his longevity with the team, especially with all the recent turnover in the NHL? Number one, the short answer is no. Jared Bednar will never win the Jack Adams with the Colorado Avalanche. The long answer is he should have already won it.
Yeah.
He absolutely should have won it in the 17-18 season. It's ridiculous that he didn't. Mm-hmm. The reality of most NHL awards are they are voted on by media and narratives get built, and those help people win the awards. We saw it this year with Nathan McKinnon. The narrative got built that it was his year, and he's likely going to go win the Hart. Why is it that way? Because it is. I don't know. Human beings are fallible.
I've always said that the Jack Adams is a goaltending award.
There's definitely some of that.
If you go through the history of guys that win the Jack Adams, they are also very closely tied with starting goaltenders who have the best seasons of their careers.
Yep.
Having an elite goaltending season makes a coach look an awful lot better. No matter what else they do, they probably win a lot of games. It's also a award closely tied to preseason expectations. And because it's voted on by media, I guess it's just voted on by humans more than anything else.
Yep.
Also, it's not voted on by media, is it?
I thought it was.
It's the broadcasters.
Is it
Yeah,
broadcast? My
it's
bad.
broadcasters.
I mean, that's media too,
I would've-
technically.
yeah.
But because it's we all decide, we all make our minds up at the beginning of the season how good and how bad teams are.
Yep.
And so because of those
Teams
feelings,
that overperform get more credit. Yeah.
exactly. And that's all there is to it. I mean, there's a lot of really great coaches like that either never win it or only win it once or twice in their careers, and you're going to try and tell me that guy was the best coach once in a season? You know, some of the great coaches in NHL history. It's just it's goaltending and it's preseason expectations. That drives the Jack Adams more than anything else.
I know I went in the trenches on Twitter the other night to defend Jared Bednar's honor. And I want to be clear that I didn't think he deserved to win the Jack Adams this year. I think the right guy won it. I just felt he was a little slighted from the conversation because I see a name like Cooper in those 13
Some of those
names.
down ballot votes are ridiculous.
And that's where I start to be like, okay, well then if this is where the conversation is, I feel like he at least belonged there in part.
Mike Sullivan got a vote for throwing away a playoff spot in Pittsburgh. Give me a break.
And that's what's tough is people who are rightfully frustrated with the season the Avs just had are evaluating any consideration for Bednar and Adams based on the postseason success or lack thereof. And that happens after this is even voted on.
Yep.
And I think the reality is everything that you're saying, the window for him to have realistically ever won this was early in his career because now the expectation has been set that the Avs should be good. And I want to be clear, though, like there was some expectation that the Avs should be good when he inherited the team because of the first year that Waugh had with the team and some of the core that was young and promising that was still there. Like there were still really talented high-end pieces when Bednar inherited the 48-point team.
True.
So the turnaround, that has been built over the last few years, I think he deserves credit for them continuing to be such a good team. A lot of that, too, rightfully belongs to McKinnon and Makar and Rantanen being in this window. But I think that they have had challenges year after year that Bednar has helped to navigate and kind of keep the wheel of the ship in place. And I just think he's a fantastic coach. He received a lot of criticism this year specifically, and I think that's why I got angsty on Twitter about it, because I think that, especially in seeing the turnover with NHL coaching jobs, the Avs organization is lucky to have found what they have in Bednar.
Yeah, the second half of this question was exactly that. Why has Bednar had so much sustained time here in Colorado? And it's the success that he's had. Yes, even post-Cup, where they've won one playoff round in the last 2 years, he still put together 350-win seasons. He still built an incredibly quality team. He
coached an incredibly quality team.
Yeah, he didn't put it together. That's McFarland and Sakic. Fair enough.
You look at the coaching job that he did last year.
With all the injuries.
With all the injuries and everything, it was a much stronger case. But because you have Nathan McKinnon, who's finishing in the top 6 of the Hart Trophy voting every year, because you have Cale Makar, who's a Norris Trophy finalist every single year, the expectation is, that's going to be a good team. Oh, wow, it ended up being a good team. So everybody just goes, cool. Nice job, Jared. You did what you were supposed to do.
And I know, Ray Bennett is maybe the one that should get the credit for the power play, but the way coaching systems work is the head coach always gets all the credit.
Well, it's collaborative-ish.
They've had a top 10 power play for how many years now? It's like 6 of the last 7 or something.
I think, yeah.
It's not that he doesn't have very good players to work with, but sometimes the best thing you can do as a coach is just get out of the way. There are plenty of coaches who get in there and try to meddle and make it harder for their best players to be their best.
I think that was Sutter's issue in Calgary.
Yep. A great example.
I think it was Boudreau's issue in Vancouver, too, because I thought it should have been Andrew Brunette this year.
He did great in Nashville.
Of course I do, though.
That was a fun turnaround.
Yeah.
I do like that story. I think the right guys were at the top of this conversation for what it's worth.
Agreed.
It was also a year where there were like 6 guys that I think you could make a good like the Hart Trophy race.
Yeah.
Like it's a good year for it. You're not looking at it going, who do I talk to about
There are 3 guys who you could genuinely win the thing.
Yeah.
Like,
if it was decided with fists, Bedsy would win. I think
I don't know. Rod the Bod might take that one. Yeah.
Brendan Moore and Bedsy might be a fun.
Rod is overhyped in that sense. I'm taking Bedsy. He like wrestles. What are those things called? Hogs?
Hogs,
In the
sure.
offseason, yeah.
I thought you were going to say
Hog wrestling.
Bears, and I was like, what a man. What a man.
All right, we'll do one more here. From Blarb, who says, we all seem to agree Miles Wood's contract is too much money and for too long. Should the Avs look to move him this summer? Or probably a better question, why shouldn't they? So here's the thing. This comes back to what I was talking about earlier. If you have a move that makes you better, you do it. But Miles Wood exists in this weird in-between area for me, where if you're moving him, it's likely for his money, and it has to be this really narrow band of movement where you're moving him out for that $2.5 million to just slide under the mark. Otherwise, you're looking at like a Josh Manson at 4.5 type of move to get more cap space freed up. And I don't know how movable his contract is, given that he has 5 more years left on it. I'm not saying it's unmovable, but I do wonder you might not get the price you think you might get for that price.
I would be trying to do it immediately. His trade protection kicks in on June 15th. So I would be trying to get it done before then, just so you have 6 extra teams that you can talk to. And I don't think that the teams that he would put on a 6-team list are the 4 teams that are in the conference
really
finals right now.
that much,
yeah. But if I am a Chicago, Anaheim, San Jose, Miles Wood would make sense for me.
Roster spots type of team. Yeah.
Well, he makes sense for me because he's a veteran guy that is going to be cheapish, that you can put somewhere in your lineup. But on the Avalanche, he should be on the 4th line. And at $2.5 million,
4th line is tough for sure.
It's too much money, and he's just not good enough for my money. He's just not good enough, and he fits their identity. We saw some fun things out of him in the postseason, but
it comes down to you can probably get what he provides for cheaper, right?
Exactly. That's really it. He's just a cost inefficient player, and that's what being in a salary cap world is you just need cost efficiency somewhere on your roster. When you have the highest paid player in the league, even if he has an amazing season, it's hard to be like, well, he's really cost efficient.
It's only the highest paid player for like 2 more months.
Yeah.
Less, actually.
Yeah. So it's and being in the position that they're in with Nichushkin and Landeskog, you have to try to cut around the edges here. You're not trading Arturi Lehkonen. The idea of trading Ross Colton is stupid. You're not going to screw with your center depth right when you built it.
Yep.
It's a dumb idea. That's why Josh Manson, there are options out there to replace a Josh Manson.
Yep.
Josh Manson, Miles Wood are 2 guys that I would start with in trying to cut money.
Looking at the Avs roster, the 2 that make the most sense, just mechanically. Nothing against the players themselves.
Yeah, of course not.
It's tough. And the reality of the conversation is what, AJ, you brought up first is the trade protection kicking in. Like the opportunity to do it kind of requires some urgency. Because I wonder if the Ryan Johansson situation and discovering that he wasn't a fit, and maybe there's some learning from that. Like we should have moved on sooner if it was possible, although it did yield Sean Walker in the end, which is really great. I wonder if there's any reflection there. Like we should have been more honest with ourselves sooner about the fit and moved on. Like I wonder if there's some cautionary tale that provided for them to evaluate the Miles Wood situation through a similar lens. Like we don't want to wait too long for this ship to pass.
Yep.
Where they're then operating from a place more of desperation, whereas now they're more so in the driver's seat of the Wood conversation. I don't think the year that he had was bad enough to demand this, but I also think that the year that he had demonstrated more 4th line role.
Yep.
And he missed a lot of time. There was illness. Playoffs was fun, and they have targeted this player for so long. This is someone that they really coveted.
Yep.
That's what I think is going to be the interesting thing is because they have wanted him for so long, can they pull the trigger to move on from him just as quickly? Because they did want this player for a reason, and I do see the fit that he teases. I think that he absolutely could still play on the Avs. It's just the money that is making it hard to justify. I think Colton, all things considered, what was to expectation in year one on the Avs roster. You know,
just had a career year, 40 points.
Yes, exactly. He has a career year. He's moonlighting as a center, kind of more full time for the first time.
Yep.
And I think that only gets better the longer he is in a full time centerman role. And I would not want to move on from Ross Colton so quickly. It
just doesn't make sense.
It just doesn't make sense. So it's not me like throwing Wood out of. I don't know. I'm not throwing him out of the conversation for being on the Avs roster just so soon. It just makes sense if you are looking to move money out to start there, like you guys said.
Yep. The player I think even fits the Avs system pretty well. He's just making too much for the role that he has.
Mm-hmm.
With Logan O'Connor like creeping up right behind him, Logan O'Connor is going to need more money someday soon.
Yep.
And because Logan O'Connor is teasing middle six upside, okay, that's dramatic. He could play a third line role.
Yeah.
I'll put that in. That's what makes it tough for Miles Wood. If these two things hadn't happened on the same timeline, might not even be having this conversation.
We would not.
Look at what O'Connor does for the Colorado Avalanche.
So much.
And I know he was on a great deal, but that guy was making $1 million.
Yeah.
Compared to Wood's 2.5. You'd rather go out and find the next LOC than be stuck with that 2.5 on your fourth line. That's all there is to that to me.
But like LOCs don't grow on trees.
For sure. I'm not saying it's easy. The Avs can't just go out and pick that guy out of the woods, but
he's pretty
The
special.
woods.
Oh. They got to get out of the woods.
I'm going to get out of this woods
For
right now.
the record, LOC, they played on the same line together.
Yep.
LOC had 25 points in 57 games. Miles Wood had 26 points in 74 games. Miles Wood had 9 goals this year.
Yep.
Like, you're talking about a guy, he didn't produce enough offensively, and he was horrible defensively. He's a horrible defensive player.
Yep.
And like, there are things that make you live with it, but that combination of stuff says that's one of the guys you should be starting with. If it were not for Nichushkin and Landeskog, this wouldn't be a conversation. This is not an enthusiasm for getting rid of the player.
Because they have top 6 players they need to replace, and that's going to cost money that
Exactly.
they need space for.
Yep.
All right. On that note, the American Raptors, Colorado's only professional rugby team, are back, and you can catch their games on ESPN Plus, or when they're at home, you can go down to Infinity Park in Glendale and check it out in person. Colton Strickler, our rugby guy, just released a new DNVR rugby podcast earlier today, so go check that out if you're a rugby fan. He also has 101 pods if you're just learning the game. Tons of different options for you to enjoy the American Raptors and Infinity Park. DNVR even having some watch parties for some of their matches this year, including giveaways. So go check them out. The American Raptors recently just wrapped up their 6th-game homestand and are now set to return to South America for 3 more matches in the Super Rugby America's regular season. Don't miss out on any of the action as they fight hard to make their final push for the playoffs in the 2024 season. Again, you can watch on ESPN Plus every Saturday. And for more information, go to AmericanRaptors.com. Once you've got your American Raptors locked away, make sure you got a Breck Brew in your hand while you're watching rugby, the official craft beer of DNVR. Breck Brew has been with us forever. We love their beers. I love their beers. They have a flavor for everybody, dozens of different flavors to try. It's summer, so I think, the Palisade Peach should be coming back pretty soon. Maybe that's not till late summer, I guess, but a delicious beer there and tons of other seasonal options as well. You can find Breck Brew anywhere in the United States. Use their Breck Beer locator on breckbrew.com and also head over to breckbrew.com to find a ton of sweet merch that everyone always asks about because it's super cool. So go check them out, breckbrew.com, and get yourself the craft beer of DNVR. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Next question. A lot of people asked about this.
A lot of you.
A lot of you. Alexander Georgiev.
Funny.
What do you do with him at the end of this season? And the unfortunate answer to that is you don't know until you get there. Because, one, I don't know how well he's going to play next year. There's a small possibility that he's not even the Avs starter next year. If he plays well, how much money does he want? Because if he wants $6 million after a good season, the Avs have proven that they're just not going to do that, and they will move on and find somebody else. So, unfortunately, my answer for this question is I don't know, but you guys might have thoughts too. So,
there's a 0% chance I'm extending him. He's given you 2 years. He's given you 1 good year as a starter and 1 bad year as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not extending that guy. Not a guy who has no track record
even
that.
If he puts together a good year this year?
If he puts together a good year, this upcoming season in year 3, I'll have the conversation.
Okay.
But as of right now, no. I'm not doing it right now.
I would agree with that for sure.
And they can look into replacing him. We've mentioned this before. The cost efficiency of his contract is going to make it challenging.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about trading Miles Wood and stuff because they have to try and cut $1 million off of positions. It's going to be awfully difficult to do any of that and then add a $5 or $6 million goaltender or something.
The only way you're really cutting money off that position if it turns out Justus Annunen is the truth next season and he ends up the starter.
Right.
But other than that, I don't see how you can save any money.
Yeah, I wouldn't extend him based on his body of work so far. I wouldn't write it off that there's no future in Colorado past this current contract, but this next year is going to be the most revealing. You know, how much of the work that he did to help grapple with the mental side of the game, how much of that work shines through next year.
I just don't, given the Avs' history at this position, I don't see how they keep him. Because either he doesn't perform all that well and you can get him on the cheap again and the Avs will say, we'll go try someone else that we think can perform better for cheap. Mm-hmm. Or he does perform well and some team's going to give him $5+ million. And the Avs are going to say no thanks.
Well, and the Avs are going to be in a very different cap environment 1 year from today.
True. Because
they will not be going into an offseason with Gabe Landeskog and Val Nichushkin uncertainty.
Yep.
A year from now, they'll know. Because if
One
Landy
way
doesn't,
or the other, they'll know. Yeah.
If Landy can't come back, they're done. It's just done.
After 3 years.
And if he does come back, then he's on your team. Great. And then whatever's going to happen with Nichushkin will have happened.
Yep.
So you'll know. You'll have an answer to Val Nichushkin a year from now. So they'll be in a very different environment. They are, unfortunately, not in that position at the moment. And the easiest thing to do with that position is just to run it back and hope isn't the plan, but when it comes to goaltending, it's all you really ever do.
If you get 2 months into the season and it's a disaster, you start making phone calls.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't sit around and become the New Jersey Devils and Buffalo Sabres where it just sinks you.
Yep. Agreed. Yep. Next question. A lot of you also asked about what do you do if Landeskog returns midseason. Now, most of this was surrounding the salary cap situation of like, if Landy returns, do you have to sell off pieces to make the cap work? How do you figure all of that out? And we kind of already covered some of those conversations with moves like Josh Manson or Miles Wood potentially. The other part of it is that's a problem that you solve when you get there. Like, we've talked about it a lot. Mm-hmm. Vegas has repeatedly proven that you can just make moves with guys on LTIR and figure it out later.
Yeah, you can allow tomorrow's problems to be tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's too many hypotheticals to even try to imagine what you do because we don't have any idea who's healthy and currently in that Avs lineup that you have to make room for.
It's a very vague approach to a question that needs a lot of ironing out for us to give an actual answer to that.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Just one that's hard to answer.
It's just very hard to
Probably
answer.
why Chris McFarland's not sleeping very much this summer.
Poor thing.
And that's like, you genuinely don't know. What happens if Landeskog comes back and then the next day, Arturi Lehkonen gets hurt, just as an example. Guess what? Now you have enough money. You're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a million things that can happen between now and the day that Landeskog returns for the Colorado Avalanche.
Kyle Ritchie hulks out and is a cheap
There's an
bottom
ELC
six
level
option.
contract.
Yeah. You're not even worried.
Between Logan O'Connor, Nikolai Kovalenko, and potentially Cal Ritchie, Jean-Luc Foudy, Oscar Olsen,
Pick your
that
favorite
third
prospect,
guy is kind of like a rotated, like pick a prospect graduating. You've got 3 potential guys here, 2 for sure, who could be on your team for
2.5 combined.
Exactly, like just not very much money, and that's going to comprise half your bottom 6.
Yeah.
You're doing okay there.
Yep.
You're not in a bad spot there, but you need it to happen, and it would be. I mean, it's more fun if it's Cal Ritchie than if it's somebody else. But
it's probably Kovalenko, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's still.
And the guy they signed for $800K this offseason, who's a 28-year-old with 150 NHL games experience.
I am dying for it to be Jean-Luc Foudy personally, because he's just such an amazing fit for how the Avs play in general.
Oh, it's going to be Andre Kasha.
If it's Foudy, I feel like it has to be in a third line role.
Yeah.
I agree. He needs some skill around him.
And that's an intriguing
Can't check.
third line of Colton.
Foudy X. Is it Kovalenko?
Is it Logan?
Maybe it's LOC.
That
I
is
don't
the
know.
weirdest.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not writing it off. I'm just saying it's very weird.
Yeah, definitely not normal.
But
third
those
line,
are
I would
good.
say.
Like, Logan would be a good adult to have with Foudy. So.
For sure.
Wait, we'll just save that for later. We'll have a whole thing talking about prospects.
Yeah,
guys
we'll
from
get
our-
to all of
Love.
that in the draft lead up and all that stuff. Yep. Gabe says, do you think it's a possibility the Avs could sign Guentzel?
The question earlier in which we were supposed to use our imagination, this would have been my answer. So signing Jake Guentzel and figuring it out tomorrow.
Here's my thing. If you sign Jake Guentzel, that means you're not signing Jonathan Drouin.
Yep.
And if you
He's
want
a better player than Jonathan Drouin, and that's no offense.
I'm
It's
cool with
just-
that choice. I'm just saying, I know there's a lot of big Jonathan Drouin fans out there. So let's not live in an imaginary world where you have Guentzel and Drouin, because that doesn't exist. It wouldn't be feasible. All right, that one was quick.
Yeah, realistically, no. But it'd be fun.
Taped Up asks, how many years do you think Mitz signs for, and how do you see him progressing with the team next year? What would be a good season for him?
Second line centers, I always say you want 60 points.
Yep, that's the number.
That's where I start.
He got
you want
awfully
60
close
points.
this season, including his time in Buffalo.
Yeah,
So
you want 60 points out of him, and he gave you 9 points in 11 playoff games.
Yep.
So you're like, you should be feeling very good about Casey Middlestat right now. Mm-hmm. What he signs, how long he signs for, what he signs for, is going to depend on what they think is going on with the $13 million question mark.
Yep.
Because if they feel comfortable that they can spend a little bit of that money, you can
Get a little frisky.
you can give him a 5-year deal and maybe give him $6 million on it and say, hey, we're going to spend an extra $1 million this year to make sure that we have him locked up at a rate that we like over the course of this contract. If you feel that you absolutely have to nickel and dime every aspect of your roster, then you give him a 2-year deal and you do it at $4 million, knowing that at the end of that 2 years, you're very likely going to have to give him a $7 or $8 million if he performs to the expectation level that you expect.
To be honest, I would love to split that down the middle. Give me a 4-year at 5, and I'm in.
For me, I think it would be such a mistake for him to take that.
I do too.
So
My expectation is he signs for 6, and the Avs lock him up for as long as they can.
yeah, I think it's 5 years, $6 million per is kind of roughly where I have him penciled in right now. A little wiggle room on either side, just depending on how negotiations are.
I always get things like term wrong for some reason. It's always the opposite of what I think. Like, a player's going to sign for several years and then it ends up being something short around 3. But he's young. I think he had a great first showing with the Avs this year. I do see the future fit for them to be interested in a 5 to 6 year contract with Casey Middlestat, and interested in getting that money to work, because I do think the ceiling for a player like that is such a great fit for what they're trying to do in Colorado over the next several seasons. And to have that position locked up, because we've seen how it can cost the team when they don't, I think is important to them. You know, that's one of those cautionary tales that I think they've learned from the last several seasons too, is that is not a position you want to gamble with. And so I could see that working in Middlestat's favor with this contract.
The other downside, potential problem that you have in going 2 or 3 years is you might piss him off. And players have long memories when it comes to the business side of stuff.
Yep.
And if you piss the guy off now, because he's like, you guys just traded for me, now you don't want to pay me, whatever. Like, you don't want him going in, being pissed off is great motivation to play well. Great motivation to play well is going to turn into good production, and then it turns into, I can't wait to be a St. Louis Blue in 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't want something like that.
I don't know how much we talked about it on this show, but when Nathan McKinnon said that Casey Middlestat works his butt off, I knew he was a Colorado Avalanche player. When Nathan McKinnon acknowledges the work ethic.
It goes back to your first point. Look at this era of the Avalanche. The front side of it, they were desperate for a 2C. In the middle, they get Kadri, they get a 2C, they build through, and they win a cup. Now, they went back to being desperate for a 2C, and you have it in Casey Middlestat. Just solve it. Just be done with it.
Pay the hardworking man.
I would agree. He needs at least a 5-year deal for me.
Was that all the main questions, Tiff?
Yeah, there's the Cal one.
It's fine. All right. We do have a super chat here we'll get to in a second. Actually, we can get to it right now. $10 from Dean, who asks, mailbag question, any cool, funny stories, AJ, from covering the team in 16-17? The one on screen is just a little too small. It's hard to read. Asked earlier this year, but timing was bad. Love y'all and AJ's takes. Got to go back to homework. Listen later.
Yeah, I mean, that's... I hate to kick this can down the road again, but, like, we have 4 minutes left in the show, and off the top of my head, I mean, most of the stories from that year are horror stories.
Yeah, not the good kind of stories.
Yeah, like Francois Beauchemin eviscerating the team at practice, getting everybody in together at center ice, and then screaming at the whole team.
Homeboys thinking about going to their Vegas trip.
Yeah, I mean, that was under the Waugh years.
Yeah.
But most of those guys were thinking about where they were going to play next year because they weren't in the NHL anymore.
Not wrong.
Like, that's the story that always sticks out most to me is Francois Beauchemin just wigging out on that team. Matt Duchene packing extra bags when they went on their trip at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Because he was so convinced he was going to get moved. And then when it didn't happen, he was really upset about it. And the way that locker room split in half and fractured into a billion pieces as the year went on. You know, Varley got hurt and everybody... Poor Calvin Pickard's just not a starting goaltender. You had Calvin Pickard and Jeremy Smith as your starting goalie.
Started Jeremy Smith for like 20 games.
I'll tell you, Calvin Pickard, why I love that guy is because even in the face of all of that, delightful human being.
I've only heard that about him. That's nice.
They're like 65 games into the season, and that guy comes into the locker room after practice one day. His career's falling apart. The team has fallen apart. Everything is going horribly. And he comes in. He's got a big smile on his face, and he's laughing and fucking throwing his gear off, and he's just having a good old time saying hello to the media and blah, 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 blah. It was crazy. So just what a delightful human being Calvin Pickard was in the face of a really hard situation. And that was the last sustained NHL action he had.
Now he's got a playoff win, though.
Yeah. Just as the Avs drew it up, drafting a guy to win them to win playoff games. So, you know, most of the stories from that season, though, are not good.
They're not the good kind.
Yeah, they're not good. That team was a...
Yep.
That team did not like playing hockey together. Not at all.
Trust me, it showed.
It showed on every level. They didn't like being around each other. They were not tight. There were no bonds. Young players didn't like the other young players. The veterans resented the young players that were there. It was bad. That's why Beauchemin rounded all of them up and was like, show some heart.
Yeah.
Just show that you fucking care, I think is what he said. As he slammed his stick on the ice and screamed at them. It is the only time I have ever seen that in NHL practice.
All right. I think we had maybe one more chat question there from Eric, who says,
Hockey question.
once the offseason is officially underway, what are some movies, books, music, etc. that you are all going to catch up on? I'll let everyone else go first.
Music, none. I'm never behind on music because I don't pay attention to it anymore. I just hit Discover Weekly on Spotify and then just listen to the same shit that I've listened. My end of year Wrapped on Spotify is 70 of the 100 songs are the same year to year. I just don't. It's just not a thing for my life anymore. Movies, I watch a ton of movies. again, I see those when I want to, so there isn't a lot of catching up. Books, getting into all of those again. I have found that fiction books bore me. I really like books about historical figures, though. P.S. Go read the definitive book on Cleopatra. She's fascinating. She was a bad bitch. Well said, Tiff. She was awesome. And I didn't know that. All I ever had, the only perception I ever had about her before reading that was she was hot. That's all people ever talked about with her. And I was like, cool. And then I started reading about her. And first of all, it sounded like her beauty might have been greatly overstated and that she was just an awesome.
Just powerful.
Master politician,
exactly.
for sure.
She was just incredible at what she did.
Of course, they wanted to reduce her down to her looks and how we remember her.
Dude, true.
Typical Roman thought. I am playing video games. New gacha, Wuthering Waves, just dropped. So that's what I picked up in the immediate. We'll see what else happens over the summer. But
Mario.
yeah, there you go. That's what I do in the rest of my life. I go home, I play some video games, and then I look at hockey numbers. That's it.
Yeah,
that's my
that
entire
doesn't really
life.
ever stop
Yeah.
even in the off season.
Next 36 days, it's a lot of prospects.
Yep.
I am looking forward to a new Nancy Drew computer game coming
Hey,
out.
let's go.
And
What
I
a
always
nerd.
loved the pop girlies. Tate McRae, Ray, Sabrina Carpenter, Olivia Rodrigo. I've never grew out of it because I didn't grow up on boy bands. I grew up on Britney and Christina and Destiny's Child. So just going to continue listening to the sugar bubblegum pop music.
Okay, here's
I learned who Sabrina Carpenter was yesterday.
Yeah,
You
no,
heard
she's
Espresso,
good.
didn't you? God,
I
that
like
song's-
Sabrina Carpenter. I struggle with Olivia Rodrigo because
I
she
support
has
her.
one song. They're all the same. I can't tell the difference.
That is, I'm going to show you more.
Okay, I believe you.
I'm not even like a huge the sound of her music. I don't love all of it, but there's some variety.
I've only listened to like her hit singles or whatever, but
That's fair.
the
That's fair.
ones that come on for me for Rodrigo, I can't tell the difference. I couldn't tell you the difference between them.
Her cover of Stick Season rocks.
That's what someone mentioned this the other day. I haven't heard it, and I like
good.
her, so I've heard it's really worth listening
It's
to.
good.
So
And I really like the original.
I got to check that out.
There you go. That's what we're doing this off season. That's what we're going to go do now since this podcast is over. We appreciate y'all. It is a long weekend, so we will be off for 3 days. I do have a video coming out that will summarize the Avs cap situation this weekend, though. So keep your eyes out for that.
Yep.
Beyond that, we'll be back Tuesday.
Yeah. If you see me at a lake this weekend, no, you didn't.
There you go. We'll be back, and we'll talk to you later.
We all silly like the mayor.